Here on Daf Dalid Amid Beis, at the two dots, V'ein osim ugios ligafanim. One may not make ugios for the grapevines. My ugios. What are ugios? Amar Yehuda binche. Binche, around the roots of the grapevines, they would dig ditches and water would gather in those ditches. And they would supply the grapevines with water. So it's interesting. The word ugios is in Lashon Kodesh, and the translation is into Aramaic, but that was the spoken language at that time. Tanya Namiyachi, we learned to the Brisa, Elu hein ugios. What are ugios? Bididin shebe ikre zesim v'shebe ikre gefanim. So these are ditches that they dig around the roots of both olive trees and the grapevines. Aini, is this really so? Is this the meaning of the word ugios? Aha, Rabbi Yehuda Shara Libnei Bar Tzisnai Lemevad Binche LeKarmelehon. Rabbi Yehuda allowed the people of a certain place called Bar Tzisai, and others say it's a family called Bar Tzisai, to make ditches for their vineyards during Chol Moed. And you just told me that according to the Mishnah, we're not allowed to make ditches around our vines on Chol Moed. Lo kasha. We can reconcile this. Ha b'chadati, ha ba'atiki. The Mishnah is machmir with new ditches. And Mekil, as we saw Rabbi Yehuda's Kula, with regard to old ditches. So creating a new ditch in soil, in dirt that's never been dug, that requires tircha yisera, strenuous labor, which is prohibited on Chol Moed. Rabbi Yehuda was Mekil with regard to old ditches when they get clogged up, to unclog them. The dirt fell into the ditches, take out the dirt. That's a relatively easy task. It doesn't require extensive tircha, exertion. The Mishnah states, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, in osin es ha'ama. Ama is what we call a canal or irrigation canal, and we're not permitted to dig such a canal on Chol Moed or on Shemitah. Bishleima Moed, I understand during Chol Moed that's prohibited. Mishum de Katarach, there's an Isar on Chol Moed of Tircha Yisera, of extreme exertion. El B'Shvius my timer, we don't know that there's an Isar Tircha on Shvius. We only know that the Torah prohibited certain categories of labor that are necessary in growing crops. Why should this be forbidden during Shemitah? Is there any sort of violation of a labor? Pligi ba Rabbi Zera for Rabbi Abba bar Mamel. On this point, we have machlokes between Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Abba bar Mamel. Chad Omar mivnei shenirika oder. Ader, which is called in English hoeing, is one of the malachos that are prohibited during Shemitah. And digging, or shall we say, in this case, we're talking about not necessarily a major ditch, but at least we're talking about some sort of irrigational canal that he is digging, and that itself is nirika oder. Chan Omar, mipnei shemachshir agafeho lizriya. What happens is that when they dig these canals, which are irrigation canals, the dirt, the soil sort of pours over on what we call the banks of this canal. And that makes the ground there much more appropriate or ready for planting. It is a process of softening the ground. And when you soften the ground because of the earth that's on the banks of these canal, it prepares these banks for planting. It's got new soil that's loose, that's moist, that's soft. And Tosfos points out that here we have to enter into the concept of psik reisha, even though he doesn't have kavana for planting. He's not planning to plant, but nevertheless, inevitably, he prepared the ground for planting. And that's considered a malacha of zorea or harisha, which is prohibited on Shvius. My Beinai, what's the nafkamina between these two answers, these two approaches? Maya Basre, where as he's digging this irrigation canal, the water immediately pushes into the canal without waiting, without delay. Even if the water comes in immediately, that doesn't detract from the fact that he's preparing banks for planting. Clear. However, Oder means when you dig ditches. Here, there's no real ditch because immediately, as soon as he puts the hoe into the ground and digs, the water comes through. Leka means there's no Easter here. There's no reason to answer it. So again, in terms of preparing the banks for sowing and planting, even though he doesn't have kavana, that's irrelevant. I mean, the fact that the water immediately fills up the space that he dug, again, that's irrelevant because of psik reisha that we spoke about before. But as far as nirek ha'ader, it's not nirek ha'ader. Gemara says, wait a second. Are you not worried about the banks that are prepared for Zriya? I mean, there's no reason to exclude that category and that prohibition. Lechush mipnei shemachshir agafel Zriya. The Gemara assumes that there was never a debate about the chashash of hechsher agafel Zriya, which is a psik reisha. So how can you permit digging the canal when the water immediately goes flowing through the canal? All right, maybe it's not nirek ha'ader, but you still have the problem of machshir agafel l'zriya. So at this point, the Gemara makes a little bit of an about face and assumes that both Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Abba have no debate. They unanimously agree that this chashash of machshir agafel l'zriya is very real and justifies the Isur. Machlokes is whether or not nirek ha'ader is also to be considered part of the Isur and a reason for the. So the machlokes is whether we add another reason for this Isur of creating these irrigation channels, namely the problem of nirek ha'ader. El ika beinayu dekashavik minei b'shadi libroi. Okay, so at this point, we've mentioned that even if there's no nirek ha'ader, like in the case where the water comes in immediately, nevertheless, we still agree, and it's universally accepted that there's a reason to prohibit it under the Isur of, the planting. But now we have an afkamina in the opposite direction. And he takes earth from the canal, and when he digs it, he throws it far away from the banks of the canal. And the earth scatters around, so you can't talk about preparing soil for planting. Islamandi Omer B'nei Machsher Agafel Lizriya Leka. Lamandi Omer B'nei Nirek Oder, and the Gemara thinks that there's only one opinion that would accept Nira Kema'ader, and that was the one single opinion of Rabbi. Well, actually, do we know who says what? Just 1 second. Chad Omar v'Chad Omar. Right, all right. We're not 100% sure at this point who holds what. But anyway, according to that man, the Omer who holds Nira Ke'oder, then we still have Nira Ke'oder. I mean, the fact that he throws the soil at a distance, that doesn't in any way remove the Nira Ke'oder. This is a machlokus whether we have Nira Ke'oder. Gemara asks again the flip side of the previous question. Is lechush. I would almost add the word nami. There. Why doesn't he accept the problem, the issue of that? It looks like he's hoeing. How can you permit digging these irrigational canals when the earth is thrown far away? You still have the problem of nirike ma'adir. And the Gemara answers, when a person does hoeing and he digs into the earth, he puts the earth back down, not flung far away. And therefore, this pu'ula that he's doing is not nira kema'adin. Okay. He has a note that the labor of hoeing is done to soften the earth. The earth is simply turned over, redeposited in its same place, the original place, and you don't move it away. Here, where the earth was moved away, thrust away, it's not similar at all to ma'adir, and therefore it's permitted during Shemitah. Now the Gemara has Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's ruling of our mission in a different version. Amemer masnile mipnei shenira ke'oder v'kashale de Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah de Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. According to Amemer, the reason why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is machmir with regard to digging an irrigational canal during the Shemitah year is because it's nira kema'adir. Now we have an inner contradiction between two statements of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. We have to somehow reconcile them. Me Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah kol shenira ka'oder asur u'remini ose adam. This is a Mishnah in Masechet Shvius in the third parak. Ose adam as zivlo otzar. A person is permitted to place his dung in a stockpile. In other words, he can sort of pile up his zevel into an otar situation during Shemitah. So that's called, in the Mishnah's language, Otsa Odom es Zivlo Otsar. Rabbi Meir, Ose. Rabbi Meir says this is prohibited. Achiyamik shlosha tfachim. Got to create this stockpile of dung 3 tfachim below the ground. That's called the omek sheyamik. O, alternatively, shiagbia shlosha tfachim, or he raises the dump site 3 tfachim above the ground. That's Reb Meir's chumrah. It's not enough to just place the dung on the ground because he's fertilizing that spot, but only if he locates the dung either below the ground 3 tfachim or above the ground 3 tfachim. That indicates that the dung is not being used to fertilize his field. If he had before Shemitah a small volume of dung, Mosif Olav Aholech, he's permitted to, during the Shemitah year, to add to that dung pile, that dump site that he had dug, or he had created, I should say, before Shemitah. And now you don't have to, even according to Rabbi, you don't have to either lower it 3 tefachim or raise it 3 tefachim. And now the Mishnah quotes a third shita, and that is Rebbe Los ben Azariah. Oser Yamik Shlosha, or Sheyagbiyah Shlosha. In other words, even in this case, where he had a smaller dump style or stockpile of dung before Shemitah, he still is limited, and he's got to either lower it 3 tefachim below the ground or raise it 3 tefachim above the ground. O ad sheyitain ala sela. Okay, we'll see what that means in just a minute, but we see that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah certainly holds that there is an option, again, if he fulfills the requirements and the restrictions, the conditions, to dig on Shemitah, dig into the ground in order to lower this dump site 3 tvachim, etc., etc. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is not worried about nira ka'odeh. Now let's just focus for a moment on the requirement of Yamik Shlosh Tfachim, Yagbiyah Shlosh Tfachim. We said that the problem is he's got to indicate clearly that he's not involved right now in fertilizing his field with this dung. Fine. Now, according to a Meimar, who had a version of the Mishnah in which Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah prohibits digging this canal during Shemitah because it's nirake oder, it's problematic because if it hadn't been that there was a reasoning given by Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that the person is nirake ma'ader, we could have said the reason why Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah prohibits the digging of this canal is because the banks are prepared for sowing. And therefore, we could have said that in the Brisa, when he's doing a ma'ader yamik shlosha or yagbiyah shlosha, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah requires that, but he allows the digging, that's a case where he flings the earth far away. And therefore, it's clear that he's not preparing the ground for planting. But the problem is that a Meimar has an explicit tradition that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was machmir as far as digging these canals, these irrigation canals on Shemitah, because of nirake ma'ader. He reconciled with the statement here in the Mishnah of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ad sheyamik shlosha, or Ad sheyagbiyah shlosha. Now, what's Ad sheyitain esasela? Or unless he puts it on a boulder. Notice he doesn't have to actually somehow raise the ground 3 tefachim, but he's got a boulder and there'll be 3 tefachim on top, and that's acceptable. So we're going to look at the Gemara's 2 answers to this question, reconcile the 2 statements of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah as to whether he allows digging, again, with the 3 tefachim and the 3 tefachim, and he's not worried about nirake ma'ader, or he prohibits it, as Meimar reported, because of nirake ma'ader. According to one opinion, we don't know who it is, that situation where he lowered it, and we said that if he had done so before Shemitah, then it would be mutter. So in other words, we're not suggesting that, he's going to evacuate the dump site during the Shemitah year. If he excavated it during a period of time before Shemitah, let's say before Rosh Hashanah, then he's allowed to bring his dung there during Shemitah. We're not going to allow him to actually excavate 3 tvachim. That would be nirei ma'ader, which is prohibited. We mean that if he had already excavated it before Shemitah, let's say Rosh Chodesh Elul, now he can lower his dump site, his zevel, into that 3 tvachim deep hole. There's another, let's say, more radical answer to this question. And according to this opinion, it's not nirei ma'ader. Why? Because the very fact that he's putting his dung there, like immediately after he digs this dump site, as we call it, that attests for the fact that he has no intention of hoeing. He's just putting it for his dump site, his dung, pardon the phrase. So we're not concerned about what people will think in that period of time between the digging and when he actually brings his dung, because there's already some dung on the site that he quotes to the name of the Chazon Ish here. And then the Mishnah says, "Umesaknin es samakul keles b'moed." Right? If you have an irrigation canal that's been damaged, then he's allowed to repair it on Chol Moed. Gemara asks, "My mikul keles." How extensive is this damage that we're going to allow him to fix it up on Chol Moed? Amar Rabbi Abba, "Hoisa muka tefach ma'amid al shisha tefach." The ratio here is very important. In other words, this irrigation canal is now only 1 tefach deep. It was originally 6 tefachim deep, which would obviously allow for much more water to go through. Now, 6 tefachim is the standard depth of an irrigation canal, and it's called an amma because an amma in depth is equal to 6 tefachim. And now, after he dug 6 tefachim of this beautiful irrigation canal, now it got filled in with dirt, and he's left with only a depth of only 1 single tefach, 1/6. So he's allowed to dig and clear out that dirt that fell in, the 5 tefachim's worth, so that it'll now be restored to its original 6 tefachim depth. So the Gemara says, Pshita. Oh, I'm sorry. I read it as a question mark. What I mean to say is that if we take these ratios, then we could certainly derive, applying the abstract principle, the following scenarios. Number 1, now he started with 3 tefachim in depth, and now he only has a half a tefach. So he wants to restore it to its original depth of 3 tefachim. This came into love or mayalav klum. We're not going to allow him to do this, even though again it's the same identical ratio of 1/6. But nevertheless, as we said at the outset, a standard canal for irrigation purposes would be 6 tefachim deep. The water's not going to go through 3 tefachim. So what does he accomplish by restoring it to 3 tefachim? Here's another case where he's really not accomplishing the goal of getting the water through, and that's tefachayim al shnei masar. He had a canal that was 12 tefachim deep. Now he's only got 2 tefachim. Again, the ratio is again 1/6. But the katarach tirchi is seira, and these are 2 cases where it's a tirchi yisera. He's exerting himself unnecessarily, excessively, and it's awesome. But what about a case of Tvachayim al Shiva? Mao, what's the law? He started with a canal that was 7 Tvachim deep. Now it's down to 2 Tvachim. And he wants to dig it 5 Tvachim to restore it to its original 7 Tvachim. Hacha Chamisha Kamamik. The Hacha Chamisha Kamamik. Our original heter of Rabbi Abba was where he started with 6 Tvachim, went down to 1 Tefach, he's digging 5 Tvachim. He's digging 5 Tvachim, it should be mut. What's it sad to say that it's also? Oh, Dilma, Keva de Ika Techava Yisera, Ika Dirchet Fe. True, he's digging only 5 Tvachim, but he doesn't, if all things were standard, he doesn't need 7 Tvachim in depth for an irrigation canal. 6 Tvachim would be sufficient. So he's already getting involved in Tirchi Yisera by making it into a 7 Tvachim deep canal. Teku, the Gemara leaves that unanswered. Abai Shor Lebnei Bar Hamdach L'Shachufe Nara. Now, Nara, of course, is a river, and Shachufe means to clear out a river. In other words, branches of trees were growing in the river. They want to clear that out. And Abai permitted it for the people of Bar Hamdach to clear out this river on Chol Moed from those branches of trees that were growing in the river. Rabbi Yirmiyah, Shoralahu lebnei Schavta, lemichra nara tmima. Okay, now, lemichra means to dig. Nahara, of course, is a river. What does the word tmima mean? Tmima is miloshen satum, like clogged. And once again, we have a kula here, attributed in this case to Rabbi Yirmiyah, to dig away from the original source of the river where it got clogged up. Rav Ashi Sharalu Bnei Masa Machasiolak Duche Nahar Burnitz. He permitted the people of Mata Machasio to clear away an entire sandbank from the middle of the river of Burnitz. Omar. Keva the Shasamine Rabin, Kirabin Domi. Now, it seems to me that this statement of Rav Ashi will shed a light not only on Rav Ashi's kula, his leniency, but also Rabbi Yirmiyah before him and Abai before him. That in all these cases, we're talking about Tzorech HaRabin. The Shasumine Rab is Kirabim Domi Utnan Osim Kol Tochi Rabim B'Moed. And on Chol Moed, you're allowed to do whatever is necessary for or on behalf of the public. Oh, he writes here in the note there of Ashi's point and that of the other 2 Amoraim was to teach that even though strenuous labor is needed to clear the river, it's permitted on Chol Moed since the work is being done to fulfill a public need. The Mishnah says, "U'misaknin es kilkule hamayim shebershus harab." So this is on the top of Daf Heyam and Aleph, and Amir Hashem will take care of that tomorrow in tomorrow's Shir. Thank you so much.